sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Jo's cover is officially blown, and the people coming after her are getting dangerously close to the CIA's inner circle. Season 3, Episode 2 wastes no time showing us that the Ukraine operation wasn't the end of Jo's problems. It may have been the beginning. Jo has barely made it home when two men come after her, and they picked the wrong house. Jo handles the immediate threat, but once Kaitlyn Meade arrives, the situation becomes much bigger than a couple of men trying to break into a house. Their passports initially point toward Romania, but the NSA quickly identifies them as Belarusian nationals. That changes the entire picture, because if these men are connected to Belarus, the obvious question is whether Moscow is behind them. And considering the CIA has just captured a Russian operative in Donetsk, the timing is almost too convenient. This is where Episode 2 really starts to cook. The attack on Jo doesn't feel like an isolated incident. It feels like retaliation. But the CIA isn't convinced the attackers were particularly good at what they were doing. In fact, Kaitlyn and Byron Westfield both seem to think the operation was almost amateurish. And that's important, because an amateur mistake is one thing. An operation that looks amateur on purpose is something else entirely. Byron decides he isn't going to sit around waiting for the Russians to explain themselves. Instead, he takes the confrontation directly to them. And this gives us one of the episode's best scenes. Byron is having dinner at the Occidental when he spots the Russian intelligence official sitting nearby. Instead of sending a message through diplomatic channels, Byron walks straight over to the man's table. There isn't much shouting. There doesn't need to be. The tension comes from the fact that both men understand exactly what the other represents. Byron accuses the Russians of crossing a serious line by targeting a U.S. official on American soil. The Russian side doesn't exactly admit anything. Of course they don't. That's not how this world works. Instead, the conversation turns into a very controlled exchange of threats. Hostages are mentioned. International operations are brought up. And suddenly, the audience gets a glimpse into the world these characters actually live in. These people don't need to declare war. They already know how to hurt each other. They just need to decide how far they're willing to go. And Byron makes it clear that the United States isn't going to ignore what happened to Jo. Meanwhile, Cruz Manuelos is finally getting a chance to come down from the Ukraine mission. But even Cruz isn't able to completely switch off. She returns to Fort Bragg and reunites with Captain Josefina Carrillo. Their relationship has clearly moved beyond the professional connection we saw developing last season. For a moment, Cruz gets something she rarely gets in this world: peace. But even then, her mind is still on the battlefield. She's thinking about how warfare is changing. The Ukraine operation showed her just how much technology has transformed combat. Drones are everywhere. Machines can attack from distances that would have seemed impossible a generation ago. And that leaves Cruz wondering what the future of warfare is going to look like. Will people still be needed? Or will technology eventually replace the soldiers who have spent generations fighting these wars? It's an interesting moment because Cruz has just experienced the future of warfare firsthand. And instead of feeling excited about it, she's unsettled. Then Jo's situation pulls her right back into reality. There is no time to sit around thinking about the future. Her team needs her. Back at Jo's house, the Lioness team starts examining the scene. And the more they investigate, the stranger the attack becomes. Tucker and the others don't believe those two men were acting alone. They start checking the surrounding area. That's when they find something that changes everything. Spotters. People positioned nearby and watching the house. Now, the attack looks very different. Those men at Jo's door may have been the visible part of the operation. The real objective may have been the surveillance. Think about what that means. If you're trying to learn how protected someone is, you don't necessarily need to get inside their house. You can watch who responds. You can see how quickly the security team arrives. You can track vehicles. You can identify personnel. You can learn communication patterns. And that's exactly what makes this situation so dangerous. The attackers may have sacrificed low-level operatives simply to see how the CIA reacted. And if that was the plan, then the CIA gave them exactly what they wanted. The team responds. Tucker and the others identify the spotters, and they move quickly to shut down the surveillance. At the same time, Bobby, Two Cups, and Korea work to get Neil, Charlie, and Kate out of the immediate danger zone. This is where Joe's personal life becomes a serious operational problem. For years, Joe has tried to keep her family separate from her work, but that's becoming impossible. Once the enemy knows where she lives, her family becomes part of the equation. That's the nightmare Joe has always tried to avoid. She can accept danger for herself. She signed up for this life. But her family didn't. And now the people hunting her have brought the conflict straight to her front door. That changes the emotional stakes completely. Joe isn't simply trying to survive another mission. She's trying to make sure the people she loves don't become collateral damage. And that may become one of the biggest problems of the season. Because Joe is at her most dangerous when she's protecting someone. She becomes more aggressive, more determined, and sometimes that can make her unpredictable. But there's another problem developing underneath everything. The Ukraine operation itself may not have been as clean as the CIA believed. Remember, the agency just captured a Russian operative in Donetsk. Then Joe's house gets targeted. The timing is suspicious. And that opens the door to a much bigger possibility. Someone may have leaked information. Maybe the Russians learned about Joe's role. Maybe someone inside the operation gave them information. Or maybe the intelligence the CIA relied on in Ukraine wasn't as reliable as everyone thought. The episode begins moving toward that possibility when suspicion falls on someone connected to the Ukrainian side. And suddenly, the story becomes more complicated. Because the CIA isn't just fighting an enemy outside the organization. They may have a problem inside the intelligence chain. That's where Cruz, Tex, and Kyle come into the picture. They have to deal with the possibility that somebody who appeared to be helping them may have been playing both sides. And that's exactly the kind of situation that makes the Lioness program so dangerous. You can't always tell who is actually on your side. The person standing beside you could be an asset. They could be an informant. They could be compromised. Or they could be feeding you exactly the information they want you to believe. And Joe's entire career has been built around understanding that distinction. Now, she may be facing a situation where even she doesn't know who to trust. That's what makes episode 2 feel like such an important chapter in season 3. The first episode established that Joe's world was changing. This episode starts showing us why. The Russians are clearly interested. The CIA has just made a move in Ukraine. Joe's identity appears to have been compromised. Her house is being watched. Her family is being moved to safety. And there's growing suspicion that the intelligence operation itself may have been compromised. None of those problems exist in isolation. They're connected. And that's what makes the season increasingly interesting. The attack on Joe wasn't simply about killing her. It may have been about learning something. Learning how the CIA protects her. Learning who responds when she's threatened. Learning where her team goes. Learning who Joe trusts. And if that's true, then the people behind the operation may already know more about the Lioness program than the CIA realizes. That's a terrifying thought. Because Joe has spent her entire career hunting people who operate in the shadows. Now somebody is hunting her. And they're using the same methods. They watch. They wait. They test. Then they strike. The difference is that Joe isn't the only person at risk anymore. Her team is exposed. Her family is exposed. And the CIA is now being forced to respond on multiple fronts. Byron's confrontation with the Russian intelligence official shows that Washington understands the seriousness of the situation. But talking tough doesn't solve the underlying problem. Someone targeted Joe. Someone knew enough about her to find her. And somebody may have helped make that possible. That's the mystery episode 2 leaves hanging over the season. Who exposed Joe? Why was she targeted immediately after the Ukraine mission? Was the attack retaliation for the Russian operative captured in Donetsk? Or was the Ukraine operation itself designed to lead the CIA into something bigger? And most importantly, how deep does the betrayal go? Because if there is a mole somewhere in this operation, Joe and her team may already be fighting a war where they don't know which side of the battlefield they're standing on. And that is exactly the kind of pressure that can destroy a lioness. Episode 2 doesn't give us all the answers. Instead, It makes the situation bigger. Joe's cover is compromised. The Russians are paying attention. The CIA is scrambling to protect its people. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, someone knows more than they're saying. The Ukraine mission may be over. But for Joe McNamara, the real fight has just started.